That's the outside temperature there, 25 degrees. It's probably actually a degree or two colder. This is always off a hair, but I'm going to set up on the deck and test out some insulation today. Now I think this cot, which is a single layer of material, is a good analog for a bridge hammock. So I'm going to be testing my insulation on it today for a while. It's the first official day of winter, but I'm just way too tired to drive all the way out and hike out there and then try to race the clock to get done before the sun sets. So I'm just going to try it here. Last year I only got one shot at winter and I missed it. Hopefully this will be a real winter this year, but in the meantime I'm going to try this and see how my insulation works. First up is going to be this 50-degree mummy bag from Ozark Trails. I've tried it in about 40-degree temperatures and it was okay. It would probably not have been warm enough for an overnighter, but it's about 25 out now, and this is going to be like an inner layer, and I'm going to combine that with my top quilt and just see how well it does. So the first layer, the inner layer I should say, will consist of the Ozark Trails sleeping bag and a little pillow there. And since I know that inner layer will not be up to the temperature conditions today, I'm going to throw on this top quilt, and we'll see how the combination does with the sleeping pad, if that's warm enough. And now that I'm inside the sleeping bag and everything, I realize I brought the wrong hat out. I have a balaclava thing that would cover my cheeks and my neck. Yeah, this. If you've ever camped in the winter, you know that everything is more difficult. And just in the few minutes that I've been out here setting up and getting everything ready, my hands have gotten quite cold. And that means that struggling with things like buckles and buttons and things like that gets more and more difficult. So if you're able to replace those things with larger ones that are easier to use with gloved hands, do so. Or at least try to find yourself a pair of thin gloves that you can still wear and give yourself a little more advantage there. All right, I'm just going to lay here for a few minutes and see how things go. So it's been about 15 minutes now, and I'm mostly warm except for there's kind of a spot between my shoulder blades that kind of runs down to my butt that's still cold, and I think that will be a problem. So I'm going to change out the sleeping bag here for my other one. It's down good to like 25 degrees. We'll see if that helps. What I've been thinking, at least with bridge hammocks, is I'm edging towards the sleep pad and the sleeping bag over the under quilt and top quilt. For a lot of reasons, but it just seems like it, well, that's where my thinking is now anyhow. And while we're at it, this pillow doesn't help either, because the mummy bag doesn't really have enough extra material to stretch over my head and then put the pillow under it, and then I've got the top quilt that has to wrap around all of that, so the pillow is just kind of in the way there. So I'm going to eliminate that from the equation here. And just for reference, I'm wearing a thin pile jacket and just regular hiking cargo pants. No long johns or anything. And cotton socks. This is my summer 3-season bag. As my memory goes, it was good down to 25 degrees. So I'm going to use that with the top quilt, and we'll just see how those pair together. I've been in this hammock for about 20 minutes, and it was really cold around the shoulders until I thought to tighten the drawstrings. So that helped a little bit, but there were still some cold spots. Some right in the middle of my back, and I've used different close-sell pads before, and I think what's going on here is that in the past, even though I've had the close-sell foam and it was a little thicker than this, I also had some kind of under quilt protector or a sock over me to keep the wind off. So I think that's part of what is going on here. The other thing that's happening is all this synthetic material is really slippery, and when I'm trying to tuck the top quilt around the side of the sleeping bag, it comes out. It's hard to stay in. Okay, we've got the blue pad underneath the folding pad, and we'll go back to trying the summer bag and the top quilt and see if that makes an appreciable difference. So now what we want to do is try and tuck the sides of the top quilt underneath the sleeping bag on both sides, and being as slippery as it is and you're moving so much, that is difficult. What I'm thinking is maybe an oversized sleeping bag with the top quilt inside. It wouldn't work for me because I'm too big and I can't find big sleeping bags, but for you smaller folk, that might be a viable alternative. You try it, let me know how it works. So you kind of got to get inside your sleeping bag first and get it around you as much as possible. And arms are out. Now you got to pull the top quilt over you and somehow figure out a way to get it around your shoulders and the sleeping bag. Where is it? Where's the head hole? The neck hole? Got it. And keep the sleeping bag, you know, it's awkward and it takes time, and you could kind of do it over a while, after a while, but it's not the easiest thing to do. Probably, and that's one of the reasons I'm leaning towards just going with the sleeping bag. As long as the sleep pads work or the underquilt works, a sleeping bag would probably be fine. In a bridge hammock, I have had no luck with them in a gathered end hammock. All right, I'm pulling my arms and retracting the arms now for maximum warmth. Well, that was actually pretty comfortable. Just adding the second sleeping pad made a big difference, and I think I'm going to make that an automatic part of my winter camping gear from now on, bringing 2 closed cell pads. The other thing that I did was I have the hood of the mummy bag over my head, and what I did was there's a neck hole on the top quilt. Your head goes through there, and there's a lot of extra material, so what I did was I pulled it in and tucked it around my neck, and that just stopped the drafts, and most of the cold spots went away. There was 1 or 2 minor ones that seemed to be getting better, although you never know. At 3 in the morning they could become an issue. Right, let's go on to the winter sleeping bag on its own. Right, here's my old winter bag, good to 35 below zero by the standard of the time. And I'm going to use that for a little bit, see how it works. It's got a left-hand zip, whereas the other 2 had a right-hand zip, so but it's a little bit more roomy. And it weighs, as memory serves, around 7 pounds. I think the combined weight of the other bag and the top quilt was close to 7 pounds, so if that's the case, this is probably a good default instead of those 2 for the winter time in a hammock. All right, 2 sleep pads underneath there. Let's give it a shot. All my sleeping bags are synthetic, including this one, and this one has an inner and an outer zipper for extra warmth. This is the winter bag, and it worked out pretty well. Under these conditions, it felt just about as warm as the other bag, the kind of my 3-season / summer bag, and the top quilt combined, although this is roomier inside, so it's more comfortable in that regard. So if the weight's similar, I'm just going to bring this one. So that's been about 15 or 20 minutes per test. And I'm glad I didn't go out to the woods today to do this, because I wouldn't have been able to bring as much stuff. And this was pretty revealing to me of some of the weak points of my gear that I had assumed would work a little better. It's breezy today, and I think that had a lot of effect on it in revealing these faults, these weaknesses. And so I'm glad it worked out that way. Of course, if I was camping for real, I'd be wearing long johns. I'd have a coat with me I could drape over me for extra warmth. And I'd have my rain fly up, and the sock over the bridge hammock, which all of that would help hold in heat and cut wind. So, but just out here, basically naked. Well, not me, but the the insulation is naked, nothing covering it. It told me a lot.